Hey Matt, can you hear me? Hey, can you hear me?
I got you, Cassie.
Yeah, awesome. Great. Okay. Let's get Lord back in here then. Lord?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep. Can
Hello. Is anybody
can
there?
you hear Matt?
Hey, mate, you got me?
You hear him?
Yeah, I'm still not getting audio from Matt.
You got me now, mate? Hello?
No, he's not hearing you.
Still audio. Hey, you guys. Oh wait, I think I can hear you guys now.
Yeah?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. All good.
You
Sweet.
can
Sorry, that was completely a me problem. My bad.
Okay, you can hear Matt? All good. All good. Great. Okay. So I'm gonna go live.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. This is why I started a bit early, right? Because let's work out the kinks.
Dude,
Cool. I'll go live now. All right, we're live.
Cool.
So I'm just gonna mute myself and let you guys carry on, yeah?
cool.
That's
Let's
good.
go. Nothing I'd rather
Hey
be
mate,
doing
how are
on
you?
a Friday night. Going good, man.
I'm Lon. Nice to meet you at last.
Yes, mate. Yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start off by saying a little bit about myself. Firstly, I'm speaking on behalf of GGWP this evening. I'm a part of Justice Esports. I'm the GM and also the manager for the PUBG team. And yeah, I've just been asked to fill in for Jax tonight because apparently she's been having a few issues with her internet lately. So here I am as a ring-in to hopefully do an adequate enough job to have a chat to you, mate, and just pick your brain about some of your industry knowledge.
Yeah, cool.
So if you want to start off by introducing yourself and who you are and what you do, man, we'll go from there.
Yeah, nice one. So my name is Matt Jessep. I'm a lawyer, but I'm one of those cool sports lawyers. Around about 4-5 years ago, I got into esports, or I became aware of the legal needs in the esports scene. And since then, I've been involved locally in some esports type legal issues. Some of them famous, some of them infamous. But pretty much what I do in the space in esports is help organizations to structure themselves, to get established, to get incorporated, help them with funding, so when they go to the market and raise capital, help them with intellectual property, so trademarks, that sort of thing, protecting their brand in the space, helping them to sell assets, to acquire assets, and lately that's involved a fair bit of work in other jurisdictions in Europe and North America. I'm also involved in gaming more broadly, so helping developers with agreements with publishers, that sort of thing. I'm based in Sydney, Australia, but like I said, doing a bit of work in the region, in Europe and the US, and involved with bodies like the Esports Games Association of Australia. I teach at universities, so Melbourne Law School, Victoria University, also down in Melbourne, and the University of Technology in Sydney. Apart from that, I'm an Aquarius. I'm an Aquarian, sorry, I'm an Aquarius.
Thanks for that.
And I'm a
Making
gamer
sure.
from way back. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, mate. It sounds like you're a busy guy, and I appreciate you taking the time with us tonight to have this chat.
It's all good, man. Thanks for having me on.
No, anytime. So just a bit of a background, like what are you currently doing? Like, who do you represent now? Who do you work for, essentially?
Cool. So I guess the ones I can name would be organisations like Direwolves. In the past, most major Australian organisations like Chiefs, Kanga, some of those organisations that are obviously pretty well run. Avant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. All right. So after the introduction of, I guess ourselves, dive straight into the questions.
Yeah, mate.
So as far as content creators go, they get demonetized for wrong usage of music, graphics, and logos. Could you tell us some quick and easy tips to keeping content on the right side of copyright?
Yeah, well, I guess the obviously the big one, the number one tip would be to understand copyright, or to have a user's understanding of copyright. Copyright is quite a nebulous legal area. A lot of organisations, obviously, so a lot of video game publishers and developers, a lot of music creators, bands, music publishers, artists, graphic designers. They hold their copyright quite seriously, and some of them, usually the ones with deep pockets, will defend their copyright quite aggressively. So essentially, what copyright is it's a form of intellectual property, and by that we mean it's something beyond physical property. So if you own a car or a house, you've got title to that. No one else can use it. Similarly, with intellectual property, they give you similar rights, and in the case of copyright, it gives you the exclusive right to determine how your creation has been used. There's different forms of copyright. So, like I said, there's written expressions of ideas. There's the artistic expressions of ideas. There's photography, music, and also computer code. So software is a form of copyright. So the big way to understand, or to stay on the right side of copyright, is to understand essentially what you're dealing with as a content creator on a platform. If you're streaming a game, obviously you're streaming under a license that you're using that game for. If you're playing music, be very, very careful, even if it's in the background. If you haven't created it yourself, or you don't have a right to use that music, say the creator of that music hasn't given you a license to use it, then you're potentially dealing with some sort of risky material. Now, usually with the live stream, you might get away with it if it's playing in the background. But with so the video on demand, so where you're uploading it, say to YouTube, there you're running the risk of demonetization and getting a strike against you by someone claiming intellectual property rights, someone claiming copyright to that material. And that's where it can get frustrating for content creators, because that obviously starts a whole nother process.
I've noticed that with when I watch back Twitch VODs at times as well, like there'll be segments of the audio automatically muted.
Yeah.
And I think that's because they're playing copyrighted material through their VOD. So I guess that's one way of mitigating that issue with
exactly. Yeah. If you've got music on in the background, if they mute that music, you could lose a whole chunk of your stream in the VOD. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And when you think about a 3-hour long VOD, you're like, oh well, there goes that down the drain. Then there's content that's
exactly,
that's capital for you essentially down the drain.
Exactly, man. So the way around it in terms of music, if you don't have the rights to it, you can look at what's called you can look at music licenses under Creative Commons. So if you go to creativecommons.org, I believe the website is, there
I
are
might try and get a link for that
creators,
as well.
yeah, creators will upload music and they'll give you licenses to it, usually royalty free.
Yeah, that's cool.
The other thing with music is as well, the creator of the music, the copyright holder, um, has the right of attribution. So even if you are streaming it in the background, it's a good idea to give that artist a shout out,
Yeah.
or somehow in the graphics on screen note who that creator is. The other way to get around it is in the US it's called fair use. So you can claim an exemption to copyright. In Australia we call it fair dealing, and it's pretty limited exceptions to copyright. It's really where you're reporting the news, so something factual, so news services can get around that sort of thing. Or you're engaging in parody or satire, or you're claiming educational purposes. It's a pretty limited exception though. The best way to stay on the right side of copyright, long story short, is be a content creator. Don't be a content pirate, if you think of it that way.
Absolutely, and keeping that fair use in mind.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, moving on to the next one. I'm a young aspiring esports athlete, and my team wants to pick me up for their roster. What should I look out for?
Okay. Look, there's a lot of different organisations out there. There's a lot of different. There's obviously there are many different people setting up these organisations from time to time for different reasons. On the whole, most of these people establishing these esports organisations have great motivations. In terms of their business and what they want to do in the space. I would say for a young person getting into esports, just do your due diligence, or have someone with you that you trust. It doesn't have to be a family member, but someone that perhaps has been in the scene a little bit longer than you, and that you trust, and will potentially do that due diligence with you or for you. And by that I mean just understanding how long has this organisation been around, how are they structured, are they actually set up as a company yet? There's a lot of young CEOs of esports organisations on Twitter or whatever.
Yeah.
There's no corporate structure behind them. They haven't incorporated with the government regulator. Essentially, they're operating as a sole trader. And their ambitions might be to set up that company structure, but they're just not there yet. So know who you're dealing with. Understand or try and get a sense of how well they're funded. So who's behind them? So who is investing into that organisation? What are their motivations? Are they in it for a short-term, quick buck, which should raise some warning signs for that young person getting into esports?
Yeah.
You want to deal with someone that's established, someone that's in it for at least the medium term, hopefully for the long term in terms of the investors. The more sponsors and the more high profile or blue chip the sponsorship base is, obviously that organisation is going to be better funded. They're going to be better serviced in terms of the equipment that you're going to use, that you're going to game with, that you're going to play with and compete with. And also just get a sense of the churn in the roster. There is a lot of churn in esports rosters. We see that. Some of these contracts are for a split or for an event, and that's fine if you know what you're getting into. That's great, so long as those expectations are matched and they're married the whole way along the relationship. Then everyone should get what they want out of it. But if you're signing up expecting to be part of an established roster, and the day after you sign, the other four players disappear, then that's potentially not a great thing for you. Understand who you're going to be dealing with on a daily basis. So who's the management, who's the coach, what sort of structure, what sort of high performance commitment does this team have? Will they help you with dietitian, with diet? Will they help you with fitness? Will they help you with sleep? All that sort of stuff is important, and it's just important to understand what you're getting into. Again, just so your expectations can be managed appropriately through the relationship. Hopefully, it's a long relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. There's more than meets the eye than just like playing games because you enjoy it.
Yeah,
There's more than just surface level stuff that are it's good to know what you're getting to as you just elaborated on.
exactly, man.
So just furthermore, I guess touching on what you sort of mentioned in our previous question, do you need a guardian or an adult to co-sign you if you're under the age of 18?
Well, um, generally speaking, yes, you do. For the contract to be enforceable against you, um, being under 18, then you would need a parent or guardian to sign that on your behalf.
Yeah, sure.
And I say generally, and there's an exception to every generalization. In the case of minors signing contracts and the enforceability of those contracts, if the other party, in this case the team or the organisation, if they could claim that the contract was one of necessity, then it's harder for the minor. Um, it's not voidable per se. And what I mean by that is, if the organisation or the team can, I guess, mount an argument that the contract provides that young person with things in their lifestyle that they are used to and that they need and they consider necessary, then it is it's not voidable on the face of it. It's not voidable per se, but still the young person can elect to void that contract if they want to. So it's more getting a parent or guardian to countersign say a player's contract in this case for someone under 18. It's more a good thing to do for the team. And I guess, from the player's point of view as well, just to make sure that the team is following through with their obligations under contract.
Yeah, absolutely. So both parties are accountable, not just the contractor, also the employer, the contractee as well, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So how can I protect and defend any personal branding, like my branding, like my logo and my name, etc., if I'm to sign up to an organization?
Yeah, that's a good one that a lot of people they don't really think about until it's too late. And when I say until it's too late, it's usually when someone else might try and appropriate that brand, or what I refer to more easily as a commercial signature.
Mm-hmm.
So in most player contracts, certainly the ones that I draft, the player is assigning the rights to their name, image, and likeness to the team for certain purposes for the term of the contract.
Sure.
So they're not giving it away. It's not an exclusive license in every area, for the world at large, for every use. It's a limited license for the purposes of promoting the lineup or the roster, for sponsorship activations, for partnerships, for
Yeah,
the
it's meant to be
publishers'
mutually
use,
beneficial
all
for
that
both
sort of thing.
parties.
Exactly. Now, at the same time, most contracts should, and certainly ones I draft, should allow for that individual player to go out to the market and get their own non-competing sponsors. So long as their existing sponsors or the sponsors they're going to talk to in the market don't conflict or don't compete commercially with the sponsors of the team or the organisation, or in some cases the league, or the TO's event circuit that they're going to participate in and compete in, then they should be able to go to market freely and source their own sponsors using their name, image, and likeness. So that has value in it, and for some players, it has immense value. So what young people need to understand is that they are building a brand, the same way that professional athletes build a brand. The same way that actors and musicians build their brand, and the commercial signature is really what they're known for. The ways to protect commercial signatures or brands legally is to register. There's a few ways you can do it, but the best way to do it is to register your property, your ownership in that brand, in that commercial signature through a trademark. So you can trademark and this is through a proactive application, whereas copyright is not something you can register automatically. It gets protected automatically. Trademarks, you need to proactively go out and apply to protect your brand in the market. So you can apply to protect the words in your name, in your handle. You can apply to protect a logo, a graphic design that is unique to you. You can also protect colors, you can protect designs, you can protect smells,
Oh, interesting.
believe it or not.
Is that a
You can
tedious
also protect
process as well?
sounds.
Like trademarking those particular things that you just mentioned? Is that a drawn out, long or expensive process, or is it pretty straightforward?
Oh, anytime you involve lawyers, it can get
Yeah, good
expensive.
point. Yeah.
But look, it's a process because you're applying to a government body. The registering body is IP Australia, and no disrespect to them, but you're dealing with generalists. So when you submit your application, you then go through a process that can take 8 to 9 months if everything goes well, if everything runs smoothly. And that's just because there's a volume of applications. There's with esports, we find it a lot because esports is kind of new, and certainly in terms of trademarks in this jurisdiction.
So many variables.
So the examiner looking at it, they're just not used to what they're seeing. But before you even apply, there's a process that you should do, and again, it's really doing those searches to make sure that on one hand, you can apply to protect your brand. So what you're doing is you're seeing if there's anything out there that might be what the Trademarks Act refers to as deceptively similar or creating confusion. And in that sense as well, you want to make sure that you're not infringing someone's existing trademark, someone's existing intellectual property,
of course,
because that could become a process in itself where you're going to market, you're building a reputation, and then someone comes along and says, well, look, I've been in a similar market building a brand for a time longer than you have. You need to account to me for your profits, or you need to stop using that name and change to something else. So it can be a bit of a process, but when you think about the value in your brand, you really need to think about it as an investment, that upfront investment where hopefully your brand can exist for a certain number of years and so over a certain time period. So it's hopefully a worthy investment up front to make sure that you can build that brand equity over time. Certainly for teams and organizations, they should be doing this. They should be making sure that they can protect their brand and they're not infringing someone else's rights. And for players and streamers building up significant equity in their own brands, it's probably a worthwhile exercise to go through on those two fronts as well.
Also, just got a question from MK in chat. Is this advice applicable to content stream teams as well?
In terms of brands?
Yeah, like in regards to what we were just discussing about like protecting, is this applicable?
Oh, completely, yeah, definitely. So I've advised content creators and streamers, and it's just the same. It's pretty much, if you're in trade or commerce, so if you're in business, and you have a unique commercial signature and you are building value in that commercial signature, you should be protecting it. The thing with trademarks is if you get a new pair of Nikes, Rare, you look on the box, it's bound to have the R symbol in the circle. That's a registered trademark. Yeah. You can also see the little TM. That's an unregistered trademark. So trademark comes in those two flavors, if you think of it like that. The TM, the unregistered trademark, it still means that you're exerting ownership. You're trying to exert your rights to that commercial signature. But if you do want to enforce those rights against another party that you think are infringing your trademark, it's a longer and a more expensive process than if you'd had already gone through the process of registering some time before. So registering simply means that you can go to the world at large, you can go out to market and you can say, I own this commercial signature in this market. No one else can infringe my property. And if someone does, you just send them a letter to cease and desist, and hopefully they go away. Yeah. Whereas if you don't go through that registration process initially, it's not fatal, but it could be expensive and take a lot of time to exert those ownership rights in court. So for content streamers that are building a brand, building a persona, building awareness and value in their name, in any logos that they're using, they're applying to any merch or doing all that sort of thing. Definitely, it's a worthy consideration on both ends to build your own value and make sure you're not infringing someone else's property.
Yeah, absolutely. Just one more question from chat as well. I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce this correctly, but I'll just give my best shot. John de Magic has asked, hashtag ESport has been recognised as an official sport in New Zealand. They have heard that the EGAA wants to do the same here in Australia. Is that true?
No, I think we've always taken the view, this is a bit of a sideways question, but the EGAA have always taken the view that esports is its own thing. It's similar to sports. It's very sports-like. I mean, I came into it as a sports lawyer, and there's things that you see in both markets. You see teams, you see leagues, you see sponsors. There's player contracts, there's high-performance coaching, there's prize money. All those things we're seeing in both worlds. The key difference is obviously intellectual property.
Yeah.
So the publisher or the developer in the title that the esport is based on literally owns that game, whereas in sports, it's more of this fluffier sort of concept of governance and integrity. So we've always seen it as its own thing, and that's why we got together and formed that body, because we felt that there wasn't one single voice for the scene. There was a lot of bodies that were claiming to be governing bodies, all that sort of thing. But again, that we kind of feel that model doesn't work in esports, because you're essentially saying that we control or we govern someone else's property. Now others have tried, and they've tried different ways, and good luck to them in different jurisdictions.
Yeah.
But and I think bodies like Sport Australia would agree that esports, while it's similar, and we're seeing a lot of similarity now because sports shut down, and we're seeing a lot of content through competitive gaming and things like a bit of sports technology with Swift races in lieu of triathlons and cycle races. We're seeing a lot of crossover with motorsport and the E-Series locally and iRacing.
Yeah, it's really
NASCAR.
cool, yeah.
So there is a lot of crossover, but again, it's its own thing. Essentially, if you're trying to get something classified as a sport, it's great because you fall under that existing framework of governance and integrity, and you also get access to a lot of government funding. Even though a lot of sports right now have got their hand out for government funding, it's not a guarantee. But just on that question, we see esports as its own unique and amazing thing.
And so it should remain. I'm an esports team owner, even at grassroots level. Do I need to have a lawyer for all paperwork, or can I use online templates?
Well, of course, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to. No,
biased question here.
Yeah, that's a loaded question, and I'm going to give you.
Best practice. Yeah.
Look, from my early days in esports, and it feels like a long time ago, 2016. I got into the scene knowing that it was still growing. A lot of teams, the investment just wasn't there. So while there was a need for professional services advisors like lawyers, like accountants, like I don't know, whoever else is out there trying to provide professional services, we see a lot of consultants now that some of them are doing a really good job. But there was a need to lean on legal resources. But I knew that there wasn't the ability to pay those usual fees. So it was a commitment I made to the scene, knowing that if I showed that commitment and showed that authentic desire to give and help those early organisations out, then maybe I'm building relationships and I'm around for the long term. In saying that, it's now, I used to get laughed at by other lawyers because I was involved in esports. In saying that, there's now a lot of lawyers that want to get involved in esports because it's kind of the only show in town. Yeah,
super niche as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I would just say to people starting, or young people, or whoever wants to start an esports organization, go for it. Have a blast. Just make sure that somewhere along the line If you're getting a template from online, or you're getting legal advice from a lawyer, make sure it's fit for purpose. And what I mean by that is that they've actually had experience in the scene somewhere. So that person might have had a family member or a child that's signed a playing contract, or they might have done a deal for an esports organization somewhere along the line for capital raising or for an M&A acquisition or something like that. Or they might have done a sponsorship agreement for a competitive gaming organization, or they might have done deals for publishers. So just make sure that the person you're getting this advice from can tailor that advice to you and your unique situation. The problem with templates are they're kind of one size fits all. So you put your credit card details into the internet on someone's flashy looking website, and you get spat out this template. There are some unique aspects to esports, to competitive gaming, to content streaming that these templates just won't account for. So I'm obviously a little bit biased, but I'll put my EGAA hat on here and I'll say, look, just make sure that the advice you're getting is suited to you, and in that case is giving you some sort of value for your hard-earned money.
And I guess I've got another question from MK here from chat, and this is somewhat in relation to what you were just speaking about, how like it's not a one size fits all sort of approach. What are the common traps that creators fall into when it comes to sharing revenue generated by the content or competition earnings? What would be a fair split? Is it case by case, and what affects that?
Yeah, look, it's got to be case by case, and I think if you think about it as a win-win, so all the negotiations I try and do, you've got to make sure that it's a fair and reasonable split. And by that I mean, obviously, as an organisation, as a team, as an org, you are hopefully providing that roster with everything they need to go and use their natural skills and their abilities and their teamwork, and apply the coaching that you've given them to go and do the best they can in their competition, whether it be a publisher-led league or it be a third-party TO type event. So long as you're doing that, and then you're trying to recover some of those costs, some of that investment through that split, and it's reasonable, and then you're trying to, obviously you're running a business and putting a bit of money aside for that continual growth and being able to get bigger and more competitive and go after the bigger signings in terms of players and sponsors, then that's fine. If you're taking a cash grab and it just looks wrong on paper in black and white, and you're a little bit embarrassed when you slide that bit of paper across the table to the player to sign, and you're just going for the win, you're not trying to help that individual player monetize their own natural abilities as a player, as a competitor, then that's probably in your gut you're probably going to know that it's the word will get out there that you're not a good organization to play for. You take too much money. It's a small scene. Sometimes
People talk.
We've seen it. Yeah, it's like no disrespect to veterans of war, but it's kind of like Twitter Vietnam sometimes when some of these organizations, inverted commas, screw over the players when they burn the roster. And it's things like crazy buyout figures that have no relation or no real sort of reasonable or fair approach to the commitment or the investment that team's made in that player. You don't want to get away. You don't want to get that sort of reputation in the market, if you know what I mean. You want to be fair. Obviously, you're there to run a business. You're there to sustain your own team, your own organisation. And I guess what I'm talking about really is the pub test or the sniff test. If you're happy to back up that split and say, well, we're not just giving you a jersey and a keyboard. We're giving you access to all these other things that help you compete. And then that's what we're asking for. That's the split.
It's meant to be mutually beneficial at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess because it's an unregulated industry as well, there's no real specific standard, I guess, that can be applied across the board. But I guess
Yeah.
with as time goes on, you know what your value is and what you're worth. Like when it boils down to like your revenue and earnings and your, I guess, your competitive nature in the particular bracket that you're playing in, I guess that gives you more wiggle room as like a
Exactly.
roster, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, if you're a gun player, you know you're going to get some decent treatment at the negotiating table.
Yeah.
If you're bringing that to the team, then by all means, go for a more beneficial deal.
And same with like
obviously you don't want that sort of deal that means that you're soaking up a lot of the resources for the team, so that you've got usually four players around you that obviously didn't get the deals that you got, and potentially getting they're taking less. If you're in a team, by the very definition of team, that's probably not a really good approach. So it's really just being commercial, like you said, going for that. Again, you want to compete as a team. Make sure that the organisation and the players around you are getting treated fairly as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I think there's just one final more question here before we throw out to chat, and we'll see if anyone else has anything else. Anyone else has anything to contribute?
Hopefully, no one's asleep yet.
No, it's interesting stuff, man. Is there any key pitfalls in the industry that you can tell us about? What should the average streamer or esports athlete or e-fleet look out for?
E-fleet. Wow.
E-fleet. Yeah, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Look, I think you touched on it just a second ago. It's unregulated. It's an unregulated industry. When you look at the stakeholders in esports and gaming more broadly, and taking into account streaming there, if you look at the stakeholders, so we've got publishers. Most of the publishers, certainly tier one esports, are huge corporations. They're valued at billions of dollars in the US. They're doing okay financially. They've got a fair bit of power. Then you look at some of these teams, and some of the teams, certainly again in the US market, these team values are kind of getting up there as well. So some of these teams are now valued at over 100 million US. Probably more now that there's no sports in town. So they've got a bit of power as well. And because they're across different esports, they're across different titles. They're diversified. So the power is spread fairly broadly. You look at some of the brands and the sponsorships that are getting involved. BMW the other day. McDonald's, Coca-Cola. These are massive businesses as well. They're quite powerful. You look at the streaming platforms or the broadcast platforms that are out there. Your Twitch, backed by Amazon, YouTube, Facebook. Pretty decently sized organizations as well. Very powerful. The player or the content streamer in the middle of that, usually, even if they're in a team, again, when they're negotiating contracts, or a streamer's trying to do a deal with a sponsor, it's them against what could be pretty big organizations. So there's an imbalance of power. So again, just get people around you that you trust in the scene, or in your personal life, or in your professional life, if you're really focusing on it as a business, that can help you get the best deals for you. And again, trying to think through the long term. So where do I want to be in esports? Where do I want to be as a content streamer? And we're seeing a lot now. The two worlds are obviously getting a lot closer when you're looking at a lot of these organizations are now they're signing up content creators as part of that esports organization and taking more of that lifestyle approach to market. So while it's great to sign a really nice contract with a well-known, reputable organization, just be confident that you're bringing value to that deal as well. Don't get screwed over on bad contracts just because you're desperate to be part of the scene, either as a player or a streamer. And I can say that quite easily, knowing that my skills kind of peaked in the 80s. But don't be too worried about signing up to a bad contract, and if you push back on some of the clauses, the team owner or whoever will just tear that bit of paper up in front of you, and the next kid in line will step forward, and there's a million kids that want to be in your position. Be confident in your natural abilities, in your ability to be coached. And if it's not the right deal for you, just keep plugging away, and hopefully a better deal will turn up pretty soon. That's probably my biggest tip. I don't want to see young people get screwed over or burned by some of these deals.
Yeah, so I guess like chats like this as well is all about bringing knowledge to the table and informing the masses, I guess. So ideally, it's about finding that compromise, I guess, with the team or that you're potentially going to sign for. And it's only an industry that's getting bigger and better by the day and the week. So,
Exactly, man.
We'll throw out this. Any questions in chat, by all means, now is your time to submit them. But beyond that, appreciate you for your time tonight, Matt. Thank you. I've learned a little bit tonight as well, having this chat to you, mate.
Cool, man.
So I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. But beyond that, I don't think there's anything coming through at the moment. But appreciate your time once again. And on behalf of GGWP and Justice Esports, myself and Jackie and Cassie, thank you for your time tonight, mate.
Thanks, man. And thanks for everyone that asked those questions. I'm glad I didn't put everyone to sleep.
That's all good. No,
Thanks, buddy.
very much appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Cool, man. See ya.
Cheers. Take care.